was looking around as I was standing in the back a moment ago while we were still all assembled. A lot of young people in this room, in this congregation. That's a good thing. And I'm glad to see so many young people sitting up front here. When I was at Freed-Hardeman, which just seems to me like yesterday, but it was from 1977 to 81. I think I was a senior. A group of us guys decided to go canoeing on the Buffalo River. 6 guys, 3 canoes. But what we didn't carefully consider is the fact that it had been raining hard for the last 2 or 3 days. Now, it is not a good idea to go canoeing when it has been raining hard, especially in a river you have never been in before. You have no idea. There are a lot of dangers. I remember going by trees that had fallen into the water and that were sort of halfway sticking out, and there would be these big Tennessee water moccasins just sunning themselves as we went by. In fact, at one point, I remember one of my buddies, we capsized many times, and we were trying to prevent, keep from losing oars and paddles and stuff that we had with us, which is another ill-prepared thing. And I remember trying to get out of the water at one point. We stopped and we were just going to take a little break and get up onto the edge of the creek, and there's nothing but woods. And as I'm reaching up on the edge, a water moccasin or a snake of some kind fell into the water right beside me. Now, I had heard an old wives' tale that snakes will not bite you underwater. But you know what? That's not true. I figured out real quickly a way to get up out of that water, let me tell you. And I remember my other buddy, after it was all over, told me later, he said, "Bob, there were times I was so tired. I was struggling and trying to keep from drowning. I was basically in my mind just saying, forget it." He was ready to just throw in the towel. I mean, it was bad. Well, I've told you that story to get you to think about something. If somebody had warned us, given us some pointers at least, we may not have called off the trip completely, but I think we would have been much better prepared. And we probably would have avoided a lot of problems. It's a little bit like when you're going down a road at nighttime. Now, we drove to Purcellville down, I think it's Virginia Route 287, and that turns into another route into Maryland. But much of that highway is curvy. There are a lot of deer. After dark, then you see those yellow signs with a picture of a deer. These are warnings. Be careful. There's something ahead that you need to be aware of. All right. So I thought, well, this morning, in just the few moments that we have, I would try to share with you something of a warning or a danger sign, so that when you're canoeing down the Buffalo River 20 years from now, or 40 years from now, you're going to think back and say, you know what, old Bob Vale, or somebody, you won't remember my name, but somebody said something that I need to keep in mind. Dangers facing our youth. You know that the wise man Solomon made a statement in Ecclesiastes chapter 12:1. He said, "Remember also thy Creator in the days of thy youth, before the evil days come and the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them." Do you know what your old age is like when you don't have God in your life? It's unpleasant. As a general rule, older people who do not have God in their life are unhappy people. And Solomon says, you better remember your Creator when you're young, before the evil days come and the years draw nigh, when you're saying things like, I have no pleasure in them. All right? But if you do this, your older age will be a time of great reward and satisfaction. And that'll be here before you know it. So, what do we need to remember while we're young? What are some warning signs that I wish they would have put there on the Buffalo River? Well, one, young people, obviously, is the danger of immorality. Immorality, or allowing into your heart thoughts of an unclean nature. Now, I don't have to tell any of you. You can tell me. We're living in an age of tremendous technological ability. It doesn't seem that long ago, in 1984, when I bought my first computer. It was a Macintosh. They had just come out. Man, I thought I was really something. 128K, is that right? Oh, wow, look at all that memory. One-sided, 3.5-inch floppy disk. First computer. I had no idea what was coming. Cell phones. It's hard to think that, just a few short years ago, we didn't have cell phones. What did we do? I remember going back to Freed-Hardeman one time at night. I had my sister, Carol, who was a freshman. I was a senior. And we were on Interstate 40, and it was dark, and we had car trouble. And in that particular part of the highway, you can't see across the median. There's woods. You can't see the other cars coming. It was really dark. There's a sign that says something like Nathan Bedford Forest State Park or National Forest next 20 miles or something. And there's nothing. Our car stopped. And what's bad is the alternator went out, the battery went dead, we had no lights. Didn't even have a flashlight. And you know what? We didn't have a cell phone. They didn't even have those then. What did we do? Well, we took some napkins out of the glove box and waved them at the next car that came by. Hey. And he was a young student on his way to Jackson, and he gave us a ride to the next exit. Can you believe that? Today, you have all of these advantages. You've got cell phones, you've got computers, you've got the iPods, you've got the iPhones, you've got devices that your parents and grandparents couldn't even imagine. Information that's available at your fingertips. But now here's the danger. You are going to have to be mature and responsible enough to weed out the bad and to make good use of the good. And although mom and dad think that they're going to be able to control what you're doing, you are the one who's going to have to make that call. There's coming a time where immorality, whether it be unclean associations, whether it be dirty pictures, pornography, whether it be stuff on there that is crude and damaging to your mind, you and you alone are going to have to stand up and say, no. So I'm just telling you now, before you get into the river, that's down there. Some of you have already seen it. Now's the time to say, enough. That's a danger. That's a very real danger. By the way, television. Television can be a wonderful thing. But you know yourself that television can also be a great curse. There is not a whole lot of great, high-quality, edifying, uplifting television on TV. Programming is often done in a way to make money and to appeal to your lower instincts and your lower desires. And it's not designed to help you. It's designed to make money. And if somebody gets hurt in the process, that's just the cost of doing business. So you're going to have to be able to turn the channel. Now, I remember the first remote control that I had. It was about almost as big as my Bible. It had a knob on the top that you turned, and it had a long cord that went over to the TV. You believe that? That was really something. Now, instead of 3 or 4 channels, you have maybe 300 channels. And you can scan through them and record this one while you're watching that one. And you have so much of that available to you. But you've got to make the call. What am I going to put into my heart? What am I going to take into my brain? You only have one. So make it count. Now here's another danger. That's immorality. Okay? Here's another warning sign that I would put up for you if I could. The danger of disinterest. Okay? Disinterest. Proverbs chapter 3, 11 and 12. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord. Despise not the chastening of the Lord. Neither be weary of his reproof. Have you ever had your parents to correct you or to say something by way of, don't do that again, and then had them to repeat it again or again and again, and it seemed to you like it was, 100 times? You can react to that in one of two ways. You can say, you know what, I've heard that. Be quiet. I don't want to hear that again. Or you can say, as Solomon suggests here, don't be weary of reproof. If somebody is telling you something for your good, be thankful for that. Be glad that somebody cares enough about you, loves you enough to say, even if it's 100 times, don't do that. That will hurt you. You see the difference in attitude? That's the attitude that Solomon is commanding us to develop. Don't be weary of rebuke or reproof from the Lord. Now, every time you read your Bible, you're being disciplined. Did you know that? We talk about church discipline. Discipline is a scale. It's like a range of things from the less extreme to the more extreme. Remember what happened to Ananias and Sapphira in Acts chapter 5? When they lied to the Holy Spirit? They were struck dead. That's pretty extreme discipline, isn't it? But did you know that on the other end of that scale, every time I read my Bible, I am being disciplined of the Lord. That's how the Lord shapes us, trains us, and helps us. Back on the farm, we have some fruit trees. And every fall, after they put off their leaves, we try to prune those trees. We try to shape them. It's interesting what happens to a tree if you don't do that. It just kind of goes wild in every direction, and it really never produces much of anything good. I think God is trying to show us something there. By pruning us and by shaping us and disciplining us, He's encouraging us to be productive and to do something fruitful with our life. Okay? And so, don't become disinterested or upset that you've heard it before. Now, sometimes it's easy to be interested. It's easy to stay interested. Think of your classes in school. Gym class. Does anybody have trouble paying attention in gym? I doubt it. Maybe at times you think, I'm not too interested in that. But for the most part, can you stay awake and pay attention? Yeah. But now when you get over into chemistry class or physics, is it tempting to zone out? Yeah, it's a little harder to stay focused, isn't it? Sometimes the way we're going is very easy. You know, farmers, when they're plowing, and they're pulling a plow with the tractor, if you've ever seen the deep, rich soil being turned up by a moldboard plow, just coming out of there and laying it over, just, yard after yard of plowing. That's a beautiful sight. You think I'm weird by saying that? It is. But you know what? Every now and then that plow hits a rock. It's called a trip-back plow. It trips back and has to be reset so that it doesn't break the plow and break the tractor. Some plowing is really easy. But every now and then we get into an area where it's kind of rocky. Up in Washington County, Maryland, there's a lot of limestone rock, and it gets hard. It gets hard to plow. In fact, some fields are so rocky that they're not good for anything except pasture. So they put the cattle on there to keep them mowed and to pasture. Your life is a little bit like that. There will be times that it goes along smoothly, and there are times when you hit some rocks. But here's the thing, just keep going. Don't become disinterested. Just keep plowing, because it's going to get a little better if you just stick with it. Another warning or danger sign, I guess, would be the danger of corrupting companions. You remember this verse from 1 Corinthians 15:33? 1 Corinthians 15:33, Paul is talking to the church at Corinth about the effect that our companions and that our associations have on us. And he said, evil companions or evil associations corrupt good morals. Evil companions corrupt good morals. I remember the mother of a teenage son who was being talked to one time about the misbehavior of her son, and she said, "Oh, it's not my son, it's the guys he hangs out with." Well, maybe, but here's the problem. If we hang out with those kind of guys, pretty soon we tend to start acting like those kind of guys and girls. The danger of corrupting companions. Who you spend your time with will largely determine who you are, what you think about, how you speak. The television programs that you choose to watch, the people that you associate with, they are controlling, to some extent, your own life. Now, the good news is you can pick. You can choose who to hang out with. And you can decide who's going to influence you and who's not. Here's another thing to think about along that line. When you think of the apostles, the followers of Jesus Christ, who would you think of as one of the strongest apostles? Whose name comes to your mind as being right out front and strong and brave for the Lord? You may be thinking of the Apostle Peter. That would be a good choice. Paul was also a very strong apostle. But you know, Peter, I like to think about Peter because he reminds me a little bit of myself. When Peter was following Jesus Christ for those 3 years, Jesus taught Peter. And he loved being around Jesus. And he grew and he developed and he matured and he became a strong man. But when Jesus was taken, the night that he was taken into custody to be crucified, Peter wasn't hanging out with Jesus then. He was standing around a pit, like a charcoal pit, at the fire, warming his hands. And he was standing there with a lot of other people who were not friendly to Jesus. And one of them says to him something like, "Hey, aren't you one of his disciples?" "Not me." You're thinking of somebody else. And then someone else says, "You know, you are one of his disciples. I recognize your speech. You sound like a Galilean." "No, it's not me. You're thinking of somebody else." And then the third time that he was accused, the Bible very sadly tells us that he denied that even with oaths and swearing. "I am not a follower of Christ, of Jesus. I don't know him." And Jesus must have been in a position right then where he could see Peter, because the text tells us that he looked upon Peter. Peter saw him and their eyes met, and he remembered the words that Jesus had said, "Before the night is over, before the cock crows this night, thou shalt deny me thrice. He went out and did what? He wept bitterly. Why? He had been allowing his immediate companions to influence his behavior rather than keeping his eye on Jesus Christ. Number 4, and I have 5 of these. This is number 4. The danger of competing priorities. Folks, I don't know what we're going to do about this exactly, but there are so many activities that you are provided these days that it is just unreal. When I was growing up, I don't remember there being so many activities to do, or maybe we just didn't know about them. Little League, football, soccer, lacrosse, ballet, the high school musical, the play, the chorus, on and on and on and on. And have you noticed how many of them more and more are having their practices on Wednesday nights or on Sundays? Didn't used to be that way. Now that's going to call upon you to make a choice. That's going to say to you, okay, I'm going to have to make a decision whether to go to this baseball practice or go to Bible study on Wednesday night. And the problem is, if you don't go to that practice, what's the coach going to do? Well, unless you're as good as Tim Miller was as a pitcher, the coach is going to say, you're not playing. There's the cost. Jesus said in Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom or church, the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. That's tough for even adults to remember. It's not hard to understand. It means if I have 2 things to do, one of my own choosing and one of the Lord's, I must do the Lord's first. That's what it means. The difficulty is not in understanding that passage, it's in doing it. Putting it into practice. But if we do that, there's a reward, there's a promise there connected to it. All these things will be added to you. Now, am I saying that it is never acceptable to miss a service of the Lord's church? No, I'm not saying that. But young people, I am saying that you must form in your mind right now a principle that you will not leave or depart from. Putting Christ first. There's a danger of forgetting that. All right, lastly, the danger of unfaithfulness. In Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10, we have this statement. Be thou faithful unto death, and I'll give thee the crown of life. The word unto there suggests the idea even to the point of. In other words, be faithful even if you have to die over it, even to the point of death. Be thou faithful unto death, and I'll give thee the crown of life. How long do you think you're going to live? 70? 70? That's what the Bible says as a typical. 70? 80? 90? My grandmother lived to be, I believe, 98. And was in pretty good mental health all the way up to right toward the end. When she, right toward the end, she always kept saying she wanted to go home. Isn't that interesting? But she thought that her home was just right down the street. Would you take me home? And it was actually way up in Vinco, Pennsylvania. How long are you going to live? 120? Some people have lived to be over 100 years old. You know what? Even if we were to live to be that long, we get to the end of it, and it's just like that. It goes so quickly. And God knows that. That's why he had James write these words. What is your life? But is like a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. That grandmother I was telling you about, she used to use a tea kettle. There's another thing you probably don't see much anymore. The tea kettle used to put out steam. And I remember as a young boy watching the steam. It just came out so much, so vigorous and strong. There was so much of it. But you know what? It didn't last long. It just went away. James says your life is like that. Right now you feel strong. You feel vigorous. You think that you're going to have year after year after beautiful year. James says, just remember, use it wisely. Because after a little while, it vanisheth away. Now, you can stay strong and faithful to the end. Because it's not going to be very long. But it's going to be long enough to become unfaithful. Usually. Living the Christian life is not like the 50-yard dash. Could you be a strong, faithful Christian for 1 week? Sure you could. How about a month? Could you go a whole month without thinking anything evil, thinking anything wrong, without saying anything wrong, just living a perfect Christian life for a month? Could you do that? How about a year? How about 100 years? Be thou faithful unto death, and I'll give thee the crown of life. It's not a 50-yard dash. It's a long run. And the way to do that is to keep your eye out there on the goal, which is heaven. We're going to talk about that, Lord willing, in our last lesson. As a young person, you are building a foundation. And when you leave home, go to college or go to a job, full-time job, and are living out on your own, you're going to be tested. Your foundation is going to be tested. When you leave home, you're going to be tested to leave the church as well. The sad thing is that this happens to too many young people. They are raised, quote, in the church, but then when they get out on their own, they decide, I don't have time for that. They forget their foundation. Let me suggest this. You're about to get into the Buffalo River. You're about to go for a canoe ride. Maybe you're already in it. Here's the last danger sign. Stay faithful. Every place that you go, find the church. Find the Lord's church. Make sure that you go to the services of the church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night. We have a young couple visiting here today from Charlestown. The Coon family. Yeah, I'm talking about you. And they just moved into the area, I believe. And they're seeking the church. They're looking for the church. Now, I've already told them that Martinsburg is closer. But this is mighty tempting too. But I've got to tell you, they're doing the right thing. They're looking for the church. They're finding the church. And that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to seek out and find the Lord's church and be faithful and strong. As long as you live, be thou faithful unto death. Jesus said, don't worry. I'll give you the crown of life. Thank you so much for listening patiently today. We're out of time.